This one is kind of counterintuitive, but extreme dependence can indicate an unhealthy relationship. If you look at like domestic abuse, often you have both parties extremely dependent on each other, and that's why the woman can't leave. That's why the abuser is under so much pressure to get this other person to get what they want out of this other person. And this is analogous to our relationship with plants, like corn. We are extremely dependent on corn. We make everything out of it. We cover the whole landscape with it in the Midwest. We're doing everything for it. We're destroying our other relationships for corn by clearing the prairies. We are investing tremendous amounts of energy and resources in the form of fertilizers, diesel fuel and tractors, and we're even going so far as to modify its genes so it will be even more successful. It's extreme dependence, and it's the same way with materials like oil. Very dependent on oil right now. We know that people with healthy relationships usually have a broad network of friends. If one relationship should fail, they've got other people that love them and will care for them. That's not what our ecological relationship looks like at all. That's interdependence. And healthy relationships, people get their needs met. And as we explored earlier, our needs aren't being met. Some of us may be fat, comfortable. Our needs aren't really being met, though. Healthy relationships have communication. We can communicate with plants and animals, the soil, just like we can with people. We can learn about them, and we can reciprocate with them. We've got to take and give, and we got to trust them. I don't think anybody in our culture trusts nature. I have kind of gone to live kind of a simpler lifestyle out in the sticks, and you all probably get this response a lot. Well, you're crazy. Well, what do you use for toilet paper? How do you stay clean? Don't you miss all these things? What if you're eaten by bears? We trust nature. Nature can meet our needs. This is where we come from. It's a sign of a broken relationship that we don't have that trust. I think The Giving Tree is a really good book about relationships between people and other living things. In this case, the Giving Tree. It's a really neat kids book. Another problem, another shortcoming of civilization is that needs are not met effectively or sustainably where they are met. So, if you need food, you can meet your need. You can go to Walmart and grab a box of cereal. Trouble is, all the energy that was required to get your cereal to that store, and it's not efficient. We're living in a disintegrated land use pattern, and we'll explore that further later. But what that means is that we've kind of dissected the land by use, and we grow food here, we live here, we play here, and we connect it with these networks of roads, networks of power lines, canals, water lines, communication lines. Because everything's so spaced out, it takes tons of energy to get resources where we need them. Ghost slaves is a term you may have heard for the subsidy of fossil fuel that makes our lifestyle possible. If we wanted to live the way we do in the United States without fossil fuel, we would need slaves. So the fossil energy that we burn to maintain our lifestyle is a ghost slave. And I don't do justice to that concept. It's a pretty interesting thing. I forget how many slaves we need to provide the energy that we need now. And we're also degrading the landscape. We're reducing the ability of the land to meet our needs we're destroying soil, stuff like that. We're working harder than we ever had. Hunter-gatherers that have been studied work 4 hours a day. 4 hours a day. They try to get all their food collecting done before the sun gets too hot in the summertime. And then the rest of the day, they lounge, they visit, they hang out. They might work on art. They might, work on their tools. Compare that to a 9-hour day that a lot of us are working now. I think most of us are working an 8 or 9 hour day. And I was talking to Rand Prier, and we actually work more hours than they did in the Middle Ages even, when we're talking about like feudal lords and serfs. We work harder. We work more hours than the serfs. I don't know if we work physically harder than they do, but we're putting in more time. Thank God for electric lights and computers, right? And of course, there's the external costs of activities like this. You guys probably know what external costs are, right? Earth has no outhouse. There are no external costs. That all will come back to bite us. The ship pile gets bigger and bigger. So, another way we can best meet our needs and meet them sustainably, meet them effectively, is permaculture. That's what we're all here learning about. But it's not the only ecological design science. You guys have probably learned about others while you're here, like keyline and holistic management. Other ways of designing systems so they play by the rules of ecology and use it to their advantage. And I think this is desperately needed. Human culture survived without ecological design. Hunter-gatherers probably did a lot of permaculture things, but they didn't really need permaculture to survive because their ecological relationships were intact. But we're going to need it today because there's a heck of a lot more people and there's a heck of a lot of repair work to be done. And just like human relationships, our relationship with the environment, if we're going to heal it, that's going to take direction and work. We can't just take our hands off. We can't just say, okay, humans are bad. We're going to rope off this section of nature. We're going to do what we're doing over here, and we're just going to stay away because we hurt nature. And I think that's where conservation is at in our country. That's the public land system. That's the national park system. But if we're gonna fix things, we need to get in there. We need to make relationships. It needs us as bad as we need it, the planet. And I think that's kind of a dangerous idea when we step back. That's just like a drug addict saying, I need to stay away from people because I'll hurt them. We are hurting the land, but we don't need to isolate ourselves from it. We need its support. Nature's incredible diversity and productivity should be our inspiration. So, the economy, the system that supports us now is not the original life support system. It used to be ecology. I'm really inspired by desert packrats. This is a packrat nest in a juniper tree in the Utah desert. It's a really cool system. So the juniper tree builds, or the packrat builds its nest out of the fallen limbs of the juniper tree. And it also eats juniper seed kernels, and maybe the berries too. And so the juniper tree provides the packrat with materials to build its house, with food, and packrats actually get all of the water they need from vegetation. So it's also providing the packrat with water. It can just chew on the leaves. The packrat uses a byproduct. It uses its own urine to cement the house together, because desert plants are high in oxalates and they'll crystallize. And it can actually cement the sticks together with its urine. So it's using a waste product, and then its species also fertilize the tree. And I think the packrat has a pretty good deal. It never has to go anywhere. Food falls from the sky. It's got free housing, and there's no waste. The same options are available to humans. They may not be as obvious. Here's my stab at a shelter from all natural materials that were available on my site. This is the house I went in. It's loosely patterned after the Native American earth lodges that they used to spend the winters in, and it's baked in earth, so it's extremely warm. You have a fire in it, and the earth insulates you. And you don't need any plastic, you don't need any nails, you don't need any cement. You just go for it. You got trees, you got brush, you got dirt, you're good to go. I mentioned the Stone Age baseline earlier. I feel like a lot of times our society has taken one step forward, 2 steps back. So for instance, we've got these great houses. They're roomy, they're warm. Maybe they meet our needs better than the teepee does. But how is that setting us back in other ways? All the space taken up by this house limits the productivity of the ground. What if they had a smaller house and more dirt? Better food production system. And this house is great, but it costs a lot of money. A mortgage is expensive. The Kennewick man who did not have a mortgage. I guarantee you. Kennewick man could set up his lodge wherever the hell he wanted. Kennewick man did not have to pipe clean water in from anywhere. He did not have to pay a water bill because all the streams in the area were clean during the Stone Age when the Kennewick man lived. You could drink out of the Columbia River. Good to go. Try drinking out of the Columbia River now. Probably not a good idea. Another thing the Kennewick man didn't have to do is he didn't have to buy groceries, and he didn't lower himself to the indignity of having to buy canned fish, because salmon were running thick up the rivers like the background of the shows. Fish was really abundant before our culture got here, and I'm sure you've all heard the stories of the salmon were so thick in the water you could run across the river without getting your feet wet. They were so abundant that the people doing the fishing at the Columbia River fisheries could afford to be very generous with their catch. And in fact, there were customs that any person who approached a fisherman working the fishery could just have a fish. So, you're a traveler, you're an elderly person, you're hungry, you go up to the fisherman and it's like, oh, I'll catch you one. Here you go, I'll catch another one. It's no big deal. Here's our modern life support system. And the first thing I want to talk about is our disintegrated habitat. If you look in the background, you can see 3 land use zones. The one in the upper left is our agricultural zone. This is what the Moses Lake area, Columbia Basin looks like from space. You can see the center pivot irrigation systems, those are the circles, and then square plots. This is where we grow our food. This is the only purpose this land serves. Hardly anybody lives out there. You see a farmhouse here and there, but it's not a great place to live anyway. People are spread out. They have to be to farm like this, so you're not going to have a lot of company. I mean, there's dust blowing everywhere. There's no shade. It's really boring because there's no wildlife. It's not a good place to live, but a place to live we have is the city, and its sole function is just to shelter us. And the idea of the city is just a safe place for a lot of humans to be and have beneficial interactions, have company. But how well are we doing on that? Our cities safe places to live. I think many parts of many cities are definitely not. And it's just failing its sole purpose in many cases. And the third zone is wilderness. This is a forest in central Idaho, and you can see that it's just a patchwork, a checkerboard of logging. So the purposes of the wilderness are extracting resources like lumber, minerals through mining, which we're recreating.